I have decided to name a new heir.
I'm your heir.
Not anymore.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's been a long time since I've uploaded, but I'm happy to be back making videos again, especially with the House of the Dragon Aura Hot D series finally kicking off and hopefully restoring some grace to the Game of Thrones series after that disastrous season 8, but the less said about that the better. Anyway, the benefit of Hot D coming to our screens is that the book is finished, completed. There's no make do or compromising the integrity of the book because it's already determined what happens. At least that's what we've been told anyway. I've read the book and it is absolutely awesome. I'm surprised they started the series later into the actual book, but I know the Dance of the Dragons will be the focal point, so it's understandable. Anyway, today I want to talk about the rogue prince, Daemon Targaryen. The prince who strives to return the Targaryens to the powerhouses that they once were. He does love his brother Viserys the First, but he thinks him a weak king who just prefers to please people instead of making integral decisions for the good of the realm. Daemon is the opposite end of what his brother is. He's war hungry, highly disciplined, and craves order. He established the Gold Cloak's dominance immediately after being assigned commander of the City Watch. However, after drunkenly calling the recently deceased Prince Balon the heir for a day, he found himself on the receiving end of the king's wrath. He left and flew to Dragonstone on his dragon Caraxes, where he stayed for some months before mounting a successful siege of the Stepstones and then eventually returning to court. We'll fast forward around a decade later as the king began his second marriage to Alicent Hightower and produced a son, Aegon, whereas Daemon, at the age of 39 and with 2 marriages already behind him, married his niece and the heir to the throne, Rhaenyra. I'm not going to get into his previous marriages, guys, that's for another day. What I want to talk about is his involvement in the Dance of Dragons, and I'll work my way to his death. For those of you who want to watch the show and haven't read the book, then this is the part to turn away. So, as you know, King Viserys I names his daughter Rhaenyra the heir to the throne, but he conceives a child with his wife Alicent. However, he does not name the child as heir and would never do so, despite the encouragement of his wife and her father, the king's own hand, Otto Hightower. As a side note, the king was so angry at Otto for continuously pushing the change of heir that he stripped Otto of his position as Hand of the King. Anyway, the king dies in his sleep, but it's looking like they will use grayscale as the reason for his death in the show, judging by that scene in the episode that shows the open wound on his back, with the physician stating that it just won't heal. It looks like grayscale. Anyway, I could be wrong. Anyway, the king dies in King's Landing. Rhaenyra and Daemon reside on Dragonstone. By the king's decree, Rhaenyra is the rightful heir and rightful queen to the Iron Throne, with Daemon as king consort. The supporters of Aegon's claim push him as the rightful king, and he actually receives a coronation in the capital before Rhaenyra even receives word that her father had died. She goes into early labour and her child is stillborn, of which she is devastated. She swears revenge and vows to bring those who have wronged her to justice. Rhaenyra begins her challenge for the Iron Throne, and so begins the Dance of the Dragons. The two claimants had their own supporters, the Greens and the Blacks, both named so after the colour of the dresses both queens wore at a tourney. Daemon obviously supports his wife's claim. It would also elevate him back up the line of succession. Daemon, as we know, loved battle and war. He thrived on it. A lot happened during the dance, guys. There was a lot of fighting, many battles, many dragons died, many Targaryens died, so I'm just focusing on Daemon's standout moments. Daemon had originally retaken Harrenhal, but then flew to King's Landing with Rhaenyra to take the capital. The enemies made by Daemon during his earlier adventures came back to haunt the Blacks when Sir Otto Hightower, now the Hand of the King to Aegon II, recruited the Triarchy to send a fleet against them. Daemon and Rhaenyra were successful in retaking King's Landing despite the opposition, as the Greens suffered a heavy loss. The rogue prince then decided to return to Harrenhal, where he would await Aemon Targaryen's arrival, something he was sure of. He waited 13 days for the prince to show up, up, and when he did, the battle above the God's Eye commenced. Daemon mounted Caraxes, while Aemond mounted the legendary Vhagar, who flew alongside Meraxes and Balerion as Aegon began his conquest of Westeros so many years before. The sun was setting as the two dragons took to the sky. The dragons' shrieks, roars and screams could be heard from a dozen miles away. So bright was the dragon fire that small folk feared the sky was aflame. Caraxes slammed into Vhagar, locking his jaws on Vhagar's neck. Both dragons were grappling as they descended from the sky. Caraxes' jaw continued to tighten around Vhagar's neck, even as Vhagar's teeth tore Caraxes' wing and his claws opened Caraxes' belly. Prince Daemon is said to have leapt from his saddle on Caraxes onto Vhagar. Daemon drove his blade, Dark Sister, through his nephew's empty eye socket just as both dragons collided with the God's Eye lake below, sending up a gout of water so high it was as tall as the King's Pyre Tower at Harrenhal. Neither man could have survived. Vhagar's corpse was found years later, with Prince Aemon's armoured corpse still chained to her saddle with Dark Sister through his eye. Vhagar's skull was brought to King's Landing and displayed on the walls of the throne room. Dark Sister was restored to House Targaryen. Caraxes lived long enough to crawl from the God's Eye back to the shore, where he died near Harrenhal. Daemon's body was never found. However, some tales claim Daemon did survive and later went on to find his lover Nettles, but most historians dismiss this, believing instead that Daemon's body was carried away by the currents. I think the fact that so many Targaryens died during the dance and also nearly all of the dragons are wiped out really lets us know that Hot D is not going to have a happy ending. Big characters will die. Dragons we may grow attached to as an audience will also die. This is a really sad story, and I'm not surprised that it's looked upon with little delight in Targaryen history. There you have it, everyone. That is my explanation on the death of Daemon Targaryen, the Rogue Prince. My question for you is this: do you believe he survived? How do you feel about episode 1 of House of the Dragon? Is there anything that you didn't like about episode 1? Something you maybe wanted to see? Let me know in the comments section below. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you all very soon. Everyone, notifications of uploads are more important than ever, so please, if you haven't already, turn those notifications on to make sure you're notified the moment my video goes live. Making videos is what I love to do, it's my dream and my passion. However, it does cost time and money to produce this content, so if you have $1 to spare to support me on Patreon in exchange for some exclusive unseen content, then you can click the Patreon link below or at the end of this video. Please only support me if you can afford it. And make sure to follow me on Instagram at InstaDeanJ and on Twitter at PotterFolklore.